Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If you've already watched part one, you know we're walking through the deeper emotional patterns that define toxic family systems. We're not just listing dysfunction, we're naming the emotional systems that quietly shape how we see ourselves, others, and define love itself. In the second part, we'll walk through three more family systems that often go unseen but leave deep emotional imprints. These are the ones that make us question love, responsibility, and even our right to exist without guilt. These are some of the most heartbreaking and eye-opening systems I see in the work I do. Before we dive in, I want to thank you for being here. Showing up for yourself like this takes real courage. It's not easy to look back at the places that shaped you, especially when those places were filled with confusion, pain, and silence. I also want to give a big shout out to each of my current subscribers. Thank you for being a part of the Trauma Well tribe. Your presence, your support, and your willingness to heal out loud does not go unnoticed. You are making the world a more compassionate, conscious, and safe place. And that's priceless. I'm so grateful we're walking this path together. If you are new to the channel, I'm Kerri McKenna-Reese. I'm a trauma recovery coach and someone who was raised in a toxic family system, full of emotional and sexual abuse. I know what it's like to grow up in chaos, to question your worth, and to carry pain that no one ever acknowledged. Everything I share here is rooted in both lived experience and professional practice. I create content for those unlearning dysfunction, finding their voice, and choosing a different story. A story where recognizing your family system isn't about blame, it's about liberation. A story where showing up for yourself, honoring you, becomes your new definition of love, because in that space, you are authentically able to honor others, even if that means at a distance. If this speaks to something in you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss part three and you'll stay connected to the Trauma Well tribe on YouTube. This is a community that's learning, healing, and rebuilding together. Okay, so let's get started. Number three, the loveless family system. This one is particularly painful. This is where love wasn't safe, received, or given. In this system, affection was either absent or painfully confusing when it was given. Praise was rare, vulnerability was mocked, and when affection did show up, it came with conditions, manipulation, or cold detachment. Sometimes the cruelty was intentional. The atmosphere wasn't just cold, it was laced with contempt, disgust, like a slow burning hostility. Affection, appreciation, and warmth, they didn't live in this home, and no one had your back. Parents in this system didn't just overlook their children's needs, they weaponized them. If a child came home crying after being humiliated at school, they might say, "You probably deserved it. Stop being so dramatic." Their child's pain was an inconvenience. Sensitivity was a joke. Suffering was met with indifference or worse, a flicker of satisfaction. Years ago, I wrote a blog post from this exact place of clarity. And it said, out of all the lies my mother told, "I love you" was my favorite. She said the words and expressed love and affection at times, but her actions rarely aligned with her words. Even when "I love you" made it out of her mouth, the behavior that should have backed it up never did. The warmth and the safety was never there. Now, my dad held his own in this area too. I've shared glimpses of him in past videos, and while we had a beautiful relationship by the time he died, it took years of honest conversation, healing, and mutual respect to get there. He didn't say "I love you" until I was 15, lying in a hospital bed about to have major surgery. But my father's love in his actions felt entirely different from my mother's. He didn't always say the words, But with him, I knew I was safe, respected, loved. He didn't lie. He didn't manipulate. He didn't make me question my worth. He made me question my choice of boyfriend sometimes and helped me see what I deserved. But I always knew I had value in his eyes. My dad could be trusted. His love was unconditional, and that was deeply felt. His home felt like home. I always felt welcome, always loved. I never felt loved or wanted by my mother, and that kind of absence leaves a significant mark. The cruelty in the Loveless family isn't always loud, but it's constant, and the betrayal cuts especially deep because it comes from the people who were supposed to love, guide, and protect us. In these families, the unspoken message sounds like, you don't need help. Your life is fine. What the hell are you complaining about? Or worse, if I'm miserable, you're going to be miserable too. These parents are often completely detached from the responsibility of caregiving. They are narcissistically removed from the basic concept of what it means to raise a child. They're unwilling to nurture, teach, or protect because they've never done that work for themselves. And that was the key difference between my parents. My father looked at himself, humbled himself, did the work to heal. My mother would not. The unhealed trauma, the self loathing, the narcissism of the parent or parents in the loveless family turns their children into emotional targets, not because of anything the child did, but simply because they existed, right? These children are emotionally starved. Some become cold, guarded, and fiercely self reliant. Survival is their identity. Others become hypersensitive, absorbing every silence, every glance as proof they're bad, shameful, unlovable, unworthy of any goodness or kindness. And some will do anything to be loved, chasing even superficial counterfeit warmth just to feel a little less invisible. Society calls it chasing love in all the wrong places. It is a soul starving for a little taste of connection to survive. Everything feels intensely personal in these homes. Every sigh, every silence, every shift in tone. Love is unpredictable. Pain is often disguised as care. So in adulthood, these individuals often expect and settle for the same treatment from friends, partners, and employers because it's what they know, it's their normal. That betrayal of love and responsibility is a really deep wound. It distorts the way love is felt, received, and understood. And many people from this family system grow up confused by kindness, not because they don't want it, but because they've never known what it feels like to be emotionally held without strings, to be seen without judgment, or to be loved without pain. They struggle to believe they're lovable, not because they are broken, but because accepting love now would mean confronting the full weight of what they never received. It would mean opening the door to profound grief. It would mean reckoning with the betrayal they experienced growing up from the very people who were supposed to protect them. And the nervous system, shaped by that betrayal, does what it's trained to do. It flinches at love, it questions safety, it doubts sincerity, it braces for abandonment, for loss. But the truth, though buried and long obscured, is and always was they are lovable. They were lovable then and they are lovable now. They've been extraordinarily lovable since the day they were born. To heal today, to receive love now, they must grieve the past that taught them it wasn't safe because kindness now feels confusing and love feels suspicious. To receive warmth today means facing what was never given. It's holding the parents accountable, not just for their behavior, but for their complete failure to deal with their own toxicity. It means holding them accountable, not just for what they did, but for what they never took responsibility for the healing they refused to do, for the caregiving they never offered, for the silence they demanded. That type of silence is extremely painful. And let me say this, Sometimes the only thing harder than being unloved by your parents is realizing it was never your fault. That kind of truth cracks something open inside of you, and what spills out is often the grief of a childhood spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Which brings me to number four, the parentified child. This dynamic often forms in single parent households and not usually by choice. While being a single parent isn't inherently toxic, and many are resilient, loving, and doing the best they can with what they have, some family systems, especially when shaped by trauma, abandonment, or lack of support, quietly shift into something deeply harmful to the child. In the toxic version of this system, the roles are reversed. The child becomes the caretaker. The parent behaves more like a peer or worse, a dependent. The child is treated like a confidant, a friend, a tiny therapist with a bedtime, not a child with a container, or not a child, but a container for the parent's unmet needs, right? They're codependent enmeshment, emotional immaturity, and often unresolved trauma. And the child learns early on that their safety depends on keeping the parent stable, calm, or happy. These children become selfless out of survival. They carry the weight of the parents' emotional instability, suppress their own needs, and often raise themselves. Many are exposed to a revolving door of unstable relationships, boyfriends, girlfriends, or step parents who come and go, leaving emotional debris behind. The child's emotional safety is never considered. Their boundaries are repeatedly violated through neglect, confusion, overexposure, and sometimes even abuse. Sometimes the parent isn't intentionally cruel. They're just profoundly unequipped, emotionally immature. I work with clients whose single parents couldn't drive, navigate school systems, or manage life without falling apart. Their world was very chaotic, and the responsibility fell on them as a child. They were left to figure things out and navigate life on their own. They became the problem solver, the emotional anchor, the only adult in a room as a child. So I've also worked with adults who carry the echo of a much deeper wound, those who were told, "You ruined my life." They were blamed for their parents' struggles, made to feel like a burden simply because they existed. And this is the most devastating legacy of parentification. When a child internalizes that kind of blame, they don't stop loving the parent, they stop loving themselves. It's deeply scarring. For a child, that lands as a shame in its most corrosive form, the belief that they are a burden simply for existing. As adults, survivors of this system often carry the superhero complex. They take responsibility for everyone else. They overfunction and overperform, anticipate needs, absorb emotions. They fix everything for everyone. They're strong and capable. They were wired for crisis long before they were allowed to be carefree. But beneath all of that competence lies a deep, hollow ache, a belief that they're still the problem, still the burden, still the reason things fall apart. A belief that their presence is too much, that love must be earned through usefulness. They struggle to hold others accountable because they never learned that their needs were valid in the first place. They feel guilty for resting, ashamed for needing, and afraid to receive or accept any goodness from others. There's also a silent grief around the missing biological parent, the one who simply wasn't there, whether through abandonment, estrangement, or quiet absence. The grief of what never was, it lingers. And that void rarely gets spoken out loud or acknowledged, let alone validated. It leaves behind confusion, heartbreak, and a lingering sense of abandonment that's hard to name, but it shapes everything, how they relate to love, to safety, to self-worth. The heart of healing here is mourning what they were forced to carry, not just the roles, but the blame, the immense emotional responsibility they were forced to carry and recognizing it was not their fault. They did not ask for the burden. Healing asks them to confront the guilt they inherited, to process their pain of being made to feel like a problem, and to reclaim the truth that they were never too much, never a mistake, never the problem. Now let's move on to number five, the loyalty trap. This is the post-divorce war zone where the divorce turns toxic and the children are turned into weapons. One parent plays the victim, the other parent becomes the villain. The child is drafted into a silent, suffocating loyalty war with no safe sides. These kids are often parentified, emotionally manipulated, and taught to distrust their own instincts. They learn to manage adult emotions, smooth over tension, and pick sides. Roles no child should ever have to carry. Now, let me say this. Divorce isn't the problem. Divorce itself is not toxic. Divorce can be healthy, even a life-saving decision when a relationship becomes unsafe or unstable. Um, the harm happens when adults don't support their children through the transition. When bitterness, emotional chaos, or poor co-parenting or unresolved trauma take center stage and the child is left holding all the emotional debris. This is when it becomes toxic. One of the most damaging dynamics in this system is parental alienation. It's when one parent actively undermines and intentionally poisons the child's relationship with the other parent. Through gossip, character assassination, or quiet manipulation, the message lands: your father never loved you. Your mother's crazy. The child becomes a pawn, and their sense of truth, safety, and self is warped by loyalty pressure and emotional triangulation. And often it's not spoken aloud, it's energetic. Kids absorb resentment, silence, and unspoken expectations like secondhand smoke. They may start aligning with one parent, not out of choice, but out of survival. They are just trying to feel a sense of safety. And in doing so, though, they abandon their own instincts just to preserve someone else's peace. Sometimes a new step parent is rushed in. Occasionally, this person is abusive, not accepting of the child at all. So sometimes the step parent is kind, but sometimes they are unsafe. Now the child isn't just navigating guilt, they are managing risk as well. And they haven't fully grieved the loss of their parents' union. And even in more stable setups, bonding with a step parent can feel like betrayal. That's how tangled the loyalties become, right? Then there are the divorces no one speaks about. The pain is, brushed aside entirely. No conversations are had, no comfort is given, just a sudden change in reality. Dad's moving out. We're still a family. Who wants pizza? I mean, the emotional bypassing is disorienting, right? The child is left in a complete confusion, unanchored, lost in a silence that feels like abandonment all the way around. They are left alone with grief they're told doesn't exist. And these kids often grow up feeling torn between people. They struggle to trust love. They fear betrayal. They can't navigate conflict without feeling they must take sides. And if a parent failed to protect them, especially in the cases of abuse or neglect, the rage runs deep. That betrayal, it plants seeds for future heartbreaks. It shows up as mistrust, emotional volatility, and the haunting belief that love is conditional. As adults, many secretly wonder if healthy love even exists. If all they've known is dysfunction in the form of manipulation, betrayal, and weaponized loyalty, then peace feels dubious. Kindness feels suspicious, vulnerability feels unsafe, and safety feels like a trap. So, adult survivors of the loyalty trap have intense confusion around love. They may project their unprocessed grief and rage onto romantic partners or hold back vulnerability entirely, afraid of being pulled into another emotional war. That's why a core part of recovery is rewiring the blueprint. Whether we realize it or not, our parents' version of love becomes the one we carry. And when that model is broken, healing means going back, examining the architecture, and choosing to build something new. The heart of healing is understanding what was needed when this divorce happened, what conversations they needed but never got as a child about the dissolution of their family unit. It's also naming the heartbreak of being forced to choose sides. Grieving the loss of protection and safety. It's a clear understanding of the kind of love they want to believe in, even if they've never seen it. Healing begins when they finally get those answers, even if they have to give them to themselves. Sometimes we have to do that. And maybe most powerfully is understanding what loyalties they've been carrying that were never theirs to hold on to. Because healing means putting them down and finally walking away from wars that were never theirs to fight, right? It's reclaiming the right to feel, to love freely, and to trust again. These three systems, where love was withheld, roles were reversed, and loyalty was weaponized, often leave the deepest, quietest wounds. They're the ones we doubt, minimize, or dismiss because the pain was hidden behind smiles, silence, or survival. So give yourself permission to name it, to feel the weight of what you carried, and stop normalizing what was never okay. This isn't about reliving the past, it's about reclaiming your power in the present. These systems cut deep. They entangle love with fear, caregiving with guilt, and loyalty with survival. If something you heard mirrored your own experience, pause with that truth. You're not overreacting, you're remembering. Part three will guide us through the final two systems, chaos-based homes and fear-driven dynamics, and offer tools for grounding, grieving, and beginning again. So if you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to Kerri Coaching channel. That way you won't miss what's coming up next. If something in this video mirrored your own story, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to leave a comment below. The Trauma Well Tribe would love to have you join the conversation. This is a space for truth, healing, and connection, and your voice matters here. And if this spoke something real in you, consider sharing it. You never know who else is carrying the same unspoken story, and your courage might help them feel a little less alone. You're also warmly invited to follow me on social media, where I share insights, encouragement, and trauma-informed support. You can find all the links in my channel description. Until then, take care of the younger you that still lives inside of you. They've waited a long time for this kind of clarity. Take some time to love on your younger self today.